So we'll start with John Dukes, if you'd like to give up to 3-minute opening statement, please.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you to the Yuba Sutter Chamber of Commerce for putting on this forum tonight, and the rest of you for showing up to hear what we have to say. I've been involved in local government for over 10 years. I've served as mayor, vice mayor, and council member, and been appointed to over a dozen commissions and boards covering important issues such as water, air quality, flood, animal services, and public health. I also served both on the Yuba City and Sutter County Planning Commissions, and I have 40 years experience in financial advising business and estate planning, management, and insurance. I've been highly involved in the Sutter Buttes Flood Control Agency since 2010 and directly helped to fast track our 44-mile levee project that was scheduled to take over 30 years and should be completed in 6 years. I'm working to help fund an additional 7 miles of the levee, which is south of Star Bend. I've been one of the few who has personally and consistently networked with FEMA, Army Corps of Engineers, and other agencies, in addition to our local, regional, and federal legislators in Washington, D.C. With the possibility of 2 current supervisors leaving, I see what could be a critical lack of flood experience, and I believe it needs to be filled with someone who has the recent and direct knowledge of the process, and I feel I would be the most effective. I believe it's time to see the big picture and take our county to the next level. First step is to bridge the gap between the city and the county. My experience with the inner workings of the city government has shown me that we shouldn't be in competition with the county, but we should be partners making our region stronger. The 3rd district covers the rural county areas and the northwest side of Yuba City, and I think those in the Yuba City residents deserve the same representation as the rural areas have received. I've been proud to serve as the Yuba City's liaison to Beale Air Force Base and an honorary commander for 6 years. I've built strong relationships and friendships with the base leadership all the way up to levels in the Pentagon, which has been key in keeping Air Force operations here, such as the U-2 mission. And it was in the paper again this morning that Congress is looking at trying to kill that. Beale annually pours $427 million into our economy. Sutter County needs to have a liaison that is consistent with Beale. This hasn't been a priority for them. In the past 6 years, I've only seen a supervisor at Beale twice. It looks like I'm out of time, so I'll wrap this up a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Munger?
Also, I'd like to thank the Chamber and everybody for being here tonight and taking your time out for this important forum. And also, I'd like to introduce my wife here tonight, my daughter and my son. They're very much supporters in my campaign, and they're the backbone of the family. I was raised in Sutter County for 67 years, worked at Munger's Market. When I got into high school, actually I went to grammar school in Sutter. I went to high school in Sutter, then I worked at Munger's Market as a box boy. And during the Vietnam era, I joined the Air Force, went away to Vietnam. When I came back, I was stationed at Travis. That's where I met my wife of 67 years. And then we raised our family in Sutter, and I built, not 67 years, excuse me. We're getting old, but we're getting older faster now. How about 43 years? Actually, it'll be 44 in June. That's good. Anyway, we'll just start this out on the right note. Anyway, after that, I had the market. I built a new market, and I ran and operated that market for 27 years. I was able to write checks, run employees, order many different orders and different things to run that market. But I was asked during that time to run for supervisor. And knowing the time it takes and to do a good job, I declined it. But after coming out, I had many people ask me to become the supervisor of Sutter County, which I have done. I have got the experience. I've got 20 years experience. I don't lack the experience of what the citizens need out in the country, also the city. Most of my calls actually come from the country. Out of 100 calls, I may even get one from the city. And usually that's a referral. and I usually refer it to the city, it's usually a road department or a light or a sidewalk problem. But out in the county, I have lots and lots of problems out there. We have alleyways in Sutter that people are fighting over, and we've resolved that. Now they can buy the alleyway they're at for 50 bucks. And so anyway, we're now changing that. We have a lot of drainage problems out there in the county, and I've been able to work with a lot of different people to solve these drainage problems and not have the call, and not have the staff coming out there on weekends to fix these ditches. I've been to Washington DC many times. I'm a big supporter of Deal. I worked with Yuba County. Actually, when we were back there, we fought for the new tower, the hospital, the barracks, and all those things were brought on to keep Deal operating. And I would still enjoy working for the Deal. What we do for his liaison out there, Deal, it's usually the chairman. So I don't know why the chairman's not showing up. He said, well, actually, that is the chairman's job to go out there and get a liaison. Okay, I'm getting short, and I'll say thank you.
And Rick Dais, please.
I want to thank you for having me here tonight. The forums we've had have been very informative, and I think everyone should be a candidate for office. It's a very good experience, and everyone should try it. I started my political career pretty early. I ran for the State House in North Dakota, 1974, 40 years ago, so this is kind of a commemorative run. As I said before, it's easy to run for office when you're 21, because when you're 21, you know everything. At 61, not so much. My experience here in Yuba City, Sutter County, I moved here in 1991. For the most part, I worked elsewhere because, frankly, it paid more. But I did spend my weekends here, and I like the community. It's a farming community. My first political involvement was got home from a 12-hour day at work in 2003, and my wife said, "There's a meeting about annexation over at the school. You need to get over there." And I said, "Yes, dear." That's what every good hubby says, right? So I went over, and at the time, I didn't really have an idea about whether or not I, was for or against leaving the county and being in the city. But there was several presentations made that night, and one of the presenters said that we needed to leave the county and go into the city to effect more efficient government. Well, that set off an alarm in my head, because I don't think the words efficient and government actually should ever be placed next to each other, not the way we experience it now. And long story short, it turned out that according to the official documents, at that point the city was overexpanding, didn't really have the resources, we didn't feel, to take care of us, and they kind of promised the services they didn't have. And so we defeated that annexation. After having to get the petitions to get a vote, we defeated that annexation by almost a 2-to-1 vote. And very proud of what we did, because it was citizens stepping up and doing what they felt they needed to do. And for the record, the city manager who left a few years ago said that, Rick, you did the right thing. And so it's nice to know that even though we had to fight one city manager, another city manager said we did the right thing. But the thing is, citizens, I think, typically do the right thing. The problem is we're all too busy. It's hard to get enough involvement. My major thing about this election is to see more citizen involvement. And also another issue is transparency. I think we've at times not had as much transparency in local government as we should have. And that discourages people from participating. It's good to see all of you here. When I was a clergyman for a while, I never gave a sermon telling people about church attendance, because you'd be preaching to the people who actually weren't there. So as far as participation goes, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, gentlemen. And we'll go over how we're going to proceed from here on. We've already discovered Jackie Lee and her signs, and she did a great job, so I won't go over that again. But we're going to go through a series of questions, some from the Governmental Affairs Committee of the Chamber of Commerce, some from the audience that was previously here, some from the current audience as the questions apply. And each of you receives up to 1 minute to answer each question, and who has the question first will rotate. The person having the question first will have the opportunity for a rebuttal, but you don't have to take that if you don't need to, and things will move along very nicely that way. And as I was mentioning before, the Appeal Democrat is taping this forum, and it will be available on the Appeal Democrat website in the next 3 days. So it'll be there as soon as it gets posted. It'll be there through the election day. So Angel, your first question is for Mr. Munger.
All right, Larry, start this split up, so let's talk about it. The current reconstruction of the levees taking place over the next 6 years deals primarily with protecting lands fronting the Feather River. What can the county do to be more aggressive in pushing for stronger levees along the east side of the Sutter bypass?
Right, there had been a piece fixed down there at the Wadsworth and the bypass that was done right after the last flood, and that shored up the area around the Dean Ranch. We're gonna have to push the state and the feds, and those are mostly state levees, to fix those and strengthen those levees up over on the bypass and the Wadsworth, and they're very crucial for the basin.
Rick?
I think I would agree with Larry. We need to have as much flood protection as possible. We'll never see any major economic development here until that gets taken care of. I would applaud all the citizens who voted to encumber their properties, all the property owners that voted for the bonds that they're going to be paying for. So let's just hope that they're administered correctly and we get the result we're looking for.
John?
Well, if I understand the question correctly, that we have taken the steps that we need to correct the problems on the 44 miles on the West Levee project. And so the weak link at this point is the Sutter bypass. And as Laurie said, most of that is state-owned. And the state at this point has told us that they don't see anything in the near future or I couldn't even say the long future, of doing any work on that area. So we're working with the Corps of the state and trying to get them to understand the value that just fixing this side of the levee doesn't necessarily make the whole basin safe.
Larry, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's a correct answer, thank you.
Okay, Rick, how pleased are you with the direction that the county has taken over the past 7 years in dealing with the financial strains it's faced? And what would you do additionally to fully right the county's economic shift? What do we need to do?
Well, I think from the moment I decided to run for supervisor, I was interviewed on the radio, and I didn't sugarcoat it. I was asked what we would do to fix the pension situation. The latest CalPERS report that we got last November, which covers the valuation for June 30, 2012, this is a new indicator that shows that our liabilities, rather than being $380 million for our miscellaneous and safety plans, is actually closer to $678 million. It's called the hypothetical withdrawal, and if that's taken into account, we are like $300 or $400 million unfunded. The only thing we're going to be able to do is cut our payroll in half. We have, even though a lot of citizens have been cutting their payrolls and cutting back, the county hasn't. Their payroll's gone from like 44 million to 45 million to 44. There haven't been any significant cutbacks. There are going to have to be some severe cutbacks in payroll, unfortunately.
John?
Well, the pension problem is an issue. It needs to be dealt with. But when Rick says that we have this huge liability that's out there, that's only if we were to have everybody retire tomorrow, and which is not going to happen. It's like a mortgage on your home. You buy a home at $100,000 and you take out a 30-year mortgage on that home. You're going to pay probably $300,000 on that over the 30 years. But we all know that. That's the interest that we pay on that. And I'm not saying that we don't need to deal with these. I think that we need to look at how we can perhaps contract out services, perhaps instead of having employees, if that's an option. It's a real viable solution that we could look at doing that rather than having to pay the pensions out for employees if we can contract those services in the future.
Larry?
I don't believe it was really a PERS question, but I'll answer it as a PERS question. Was that right?
No, not necessarily. It asks if you're pleased with the direction the county has taken over the past 7 years in dealing with the financial strains it's faced, and what additionally would you do to fully right the county's economic shift? So I think PERS was brought in as one example.
Right, one example. One example was last year we consolidated our community service department. That saved a lot of money. And that's one thing that we can do down the road if we need to do it again. PERS, we've got a two-tier system. The city has not done it. We have already negotiated, and we've brought our people from 2.7 to 2%. and from 3.5% down to 3% for safety, and they're paying their share, also paying their share of insurance. So I think we've done the right steps to go in the right direction. And if you cut back people, they're younger ones that come in. This is what pays for your pension. So if you're going to cut back and let people go, yeah, it's going to cost you down the road.
Anything further, Rick?
Well, in rebuttal, the liabilities are important, and it's not about people retiring all at once. The accrued liability is simply the obligation we owe to our employees. Those who are retired, all their services passed. For present employees, it's up to June 30, 2012. That's all past performance. This is nothing into the future. It has nothing to do with people retiring. This is the obligation we have, and we are up to $400 million unfunded. PERS will never be whole. The only thing we can do is to have an exit strategy to where we get out of PERS and start just liquidating things to pay it off. Or we're going to have to go so far as to negotiate with people already retired because the money simply is not going to be there. If we don't solve this issue, there won't be any other issues of import for the county or the city.
I'd like to mention one thing, but before we go to the next question, if you do submit a question, we have quite a few that have been submitted already. Please do not aim it at one person. This would be a question that all people can answer. So just to let you know that. Angel?
All right. I mentioned this earlier, so it may not get the same laugh that it did last time. Always happens with the 10 o'clock show. But if, you heard the term, if I had a dime for every time well, if for instance, candidates for public office, and in fact, all of you at some time have run before, you've always mentioned creating more jobs as an issue that you'll attack when you're elected. And if we had a job for every time we heard that, we probably wouldn't have to deal with this issue. So tell me specifically, we'll start with you, John. What initiatives would you propose that would truly result in job creation in Yuba City, in Live Oak, and in other unincorporated areas of Sutter County?
It's a great question. Everybody, and when you're running for office, jobs is one of the main things, and they ask you what you're going to do. In my opinion, government doesn't create jobs. Businesses are the ones that create jobs. Government needs to get out of the way and make it so that it is easier for businesses to create those jobs. One of the things that I am proposing doing is working with Yuba County Water Agency to form a public utility district in this area for Yuba County, Sutter County, and Butte County. In 2016, the licensing for that facility at Buller's Bar is going to be up, and there's going to be a lot of money that's going to be available. And I would like to see that money put into a public utility district so that we can lower the cost of energy for our residents and for businesses. If we can lower the cost of power by 30 to 40% by having a public utility district, we will become a magnet for businesses that want to locate in our region.
All right?
Job creation here, we have actually many jobs that cannot be done. We just don't have the education to fill these jobs within the community. If we can get these young ones educated to college and come back here, as my kids did, they all come back here with good jobs. We just need to get education and send them off and have them come back here to be good citizens. Also, we have a business right now that can give us cheap power, and that's Calpine. They're getting ready to work to hook up to PG&E now. Once they hook up, we have that cheap power. And John mentioned the Buller's Bar, and we talked about that about 15 years ago, and that's a good idea. But we still have to buy all the transmission lines. It's going to be very expensive to do that. And I don't see that within 20 years by the time you get hooked up and be able to transmit within that area. But we can use Calpine right away.
Thank you. Rick?
Jobs are a problem here. I created my own job by starting a firewood business, and every day during the season I would have someone come up and ask me for a job, and it hurt me to have to tell them I worked alone. I don't believe, I agree with John, it's not the job of business to create jobs. A job of government. We need to get out of the way of people who could create jobs if there were less restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. I think one thing that we could do to attract major businesses is to perhaps I don't want to lecture, but perhaps do a better job as far as our civic duty is concerned. I think we have kind of been lax in taking care of issues, taking care of situations. Again, the pension issue, we have not resolved it. There doesn't seem to be any sense of urgency. I see people smiling. We won't be smiling when the city of Yuba City goes bankrupt in 3 to 5 years. If we had, I think, more civic participation, we could convince companies that we're ready for the prime time.
John, did you want to add anything?
Absolutely would like to. First of all, the city of Yuba City is not going bankrupt in the next 3 to 5 years. Yuba City is probably one of the strongest cities in this region. And so making comments like that, Rick, are irresponsible. As far as putting together a utility package, it would take some time to do that. We don't necessarily have to go out and buy all those transmission lines at this point. They could be rented from PG&E to be able to accomplish what we need to do. But we need to be open to looking at these things and looking at solutions where we can actually make it so that we're a more business-friendly community. I went to Texas 3 years ago with Dan Logue and met with Governor Rick Perry. And one of the things that I came away from down there, they had the CEO from Carl's Jr. there. They were putting in 200 stores in Texas that year. And the reason was that from start to finish, it takes 12 months in Texas, and in California, it takes 18 months because of our regulations. We need to reduce regulations and get out of the way and let business do what they do best, create jobs.
Thank you, John.
Okay, our next question is for Larry. This is both from the audience and from the Government Affairs Committee with respect to the state of Jefferson. Yuba County recently voted to support the concept of the state of Jefferson, and we're asking, should Sutter County throw its support to the state of Jefferson? And is the state of Jefferson just a way to protest the lack of state support of rural counties? Or could it be such a new state? Could that be viable logistically and financially?
Okay, first of all, I do support the state of Jefferson. Second of all, I think it should go to the voter of the people. I don't believe that's one of the main problems we have now, because the state's making our decisions and we're taking the vote out of the people. So we take it to the people, let them vote on it, and then from there we need to study it and find out if it's going to be feasible or not. I know many small counties from MoDOT clear down the Sierras. They would all like to pull and go to the state of Jefferson. So it's something to look at. It's a warning sign for the state. They need to take heed, and they need to start listening to the smaller counties. Thank you.
Rick?
I support the concept of Jefferson. I think it's great that people are finally realizing that they need to step up and confront the issues. Whether it's going to take place in the near future, it's another question, but I agree with Larry that people should be able to vote on it. It should be direct democracy.
John?
Well, I believe in the concept of the state of Jefferson. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I declared that I would throw my hat in the ring as governor of the state of Jefferson. So we'll see what happens when that gets here. But I do support it. I think that this has come about from the standpoint that the rural counties, especially here in Northern California, do not have the representation in Sacramento in the numbers that Southern California does. And I think water plays a big part of this too. We supply 75% of the water for the state. And they control what we do a lot. And so I think it's time that we take back some of that control and be able to determine our own future in the northern state.
Larry, anything you want to add on that?
No, it's pretty much said. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, well, recently, we'll start with Rick. Recently, it appears that Yuba City and Sutter County have had, let's say, a strained relationship. What will you do to ensure that the county and city work together, especially as it relates to economic development?
Well, I hate to be rude, but sometimes I think it's nice when the two governments fight each other. I think citizens are in trouble when the governments gang up on the citizens. So a little bit of that is okay. It's bad when there's a waste of resources. I think we should cooperate between the city and the county. There could be economies of scale. We could save money. But as far as economic development goes, again, I don't think it's government's job to create jobs. I think that should be left to the private industry.
John?
Well, there has been a rift between the county and the city, and there's plenty of blame to go around on both sides, quite honestly. But being that I have been a part of the city government, I feel that I can bring the relationships that I have built with city government and merge those and be an ambassador for the county and the city to be able to create a better working relationship between the two, because I think it is important. When you realize that 69% of the population of the county is the city of Yuba City, you can't have these kind of adversarial relationships because you're representing a good share of those people.
My turn. Yeah, basically, we had a good working relationship before the last administrator of the city came. He had no trouble. He came here and he wanted hard grips on everything. He was unable to be controlled. Before that, we were able to work out a lot of tax agreements. And now, I think with the new administrator, we have Steve Kruger, we can get on the right track and work with the city council. I think the last one was just too much control by the administrator that could not be controlled by the city council.
Rick, did you want to add anything else?
Okay, John, a new shopping center just south of Yuba City in the Bogue Road area is being proposed along Highway 99. Costco is said to be a prospective tenant and certainly interested, I imagine, in that traffic count. Would you support making the proposed location work, or should it be built somewhere inside the current city limits?
Well, there is the city limits, and then there's the sphere of influence, and Bogue Road is the south portion of the sphere of influence. And the way that government has been set up is that you have a sphere of influence in a county, which is how far out a city can grow, and then there's the city limits, which is inside that currently. So we have plenty of room in those areas to do it. Cities are in place because they provide the infrastructure, such as sewer and water and street lighting and all those different types of things. And that's what a city provides. And so when you get outside of those boundaries, those services are not available for that. So we would have to look at some type of an annexation if we were going to do that. And I'm not sure at this point. I think there's still plenty of land available within the sphere of influence without having to go outside of that and spend dollars increasing those public services to areas outside of what we're currently serving.
Larry?
Right, I'd rather much see it inside the sphere. But if it comes to the point that we're going to lose the box store, I'd like to work with the city to see if we can get services down there. But I would rather see it inside the sphere. There's plenty of area to use it there. It'd be faster to hook it up, faster to get them in, because we do have services pretty close to the area in that sphere. But I'd rather see it in the sphere.
Rick?
I would agree with John and Larry. I don't think the city has the resources to take care of what they have going on right now, so let's stick with what we have. As far as giving into a large corporation, I think we as a community have to decide what's good for us. If they want to go somewhere else, that's their prerogative.
Anything else you want to add, John?
Just real quickly, Rick has alluded to several times that the city doesn't have the ability to deliver the services that we are delivering now. We certainly have plenty of water capacity with our water. We have plenty of capacity with our water treatment facility. And so we have the facilities to be able to handle this kind of growth, but it's where that growth should be taking place. And so we are in a position to handle growth. And so I just wanted to make that clear.
All right, well, it sounds like you all agree that government can't do anything to create jobs. So let's take it from a different point of view then. In terms of creating the environment for businesses to be able to do jobs, and specifically looking at the general plans for Yuba City and Sutter County. Do you feel they have flaws? And if you do, what would you like to see change to further the economic growth of Yuba County and Yuba City? We'll start with Larry.
First of all, work with the EDC and see if we can bring them in. And also work with the city to see if there's a location within the city. If you're going to bring a big business in, out in the county, we can only bring in a lot of businesses exactly like equipment businesses or welding or different manufacturing of farm equipment. But within the city, you've got all the water, sewer, and everything to do that. Eventually, when we do South County, I'll work with those developers. And if they come forward and identify what they need, then we can work with staff and fast track it. But I think South County will be a good area eventually for Sutter County.
Rick?
Someone having Excedrin, land use issues give me a headache. I think the general plans we have right now are probably pretty good, but if there's a problem, someone comes in and has a problem, there are variances that can be, I think, enacted, and it comes back to the board. Eventually, the board is the last judge of things, so I think these things can be handled. Larry brought up South Sutter, and one of my proposals is to actually take that area out of our hair. I lived in San Antonio, Texas, and San Antonio was a huge, big circle. When they expanded, rather than asking a county with a few people and a lot of cows to take over development, they would annex that area. Then the Thomas Basin, I think it's problematic. We should give all the land to Sutter County, the Thomas Basin to Sacramento, let them deal with it. If it ever develops down there, we'll have the tail wagging the dog, and I think it's all bad.
John?
Part of the issue is the environment for businesses to want to come here. Going back to the question basically is that when I was in Texas, and one of the things that I brought home was that we have a culture here in California that when a business wants to come and locate into our city, our county, wherever it is, and they go to the planning department, a lot of times they're faced with the attitude that, well, you can't do that, you can't do that, you've got to do that. In Texas, the attitude was, what can we do to help you succeed? We need to change the culture of how we are meeting with those businesses who want to locate here. We need to change the culture is that we are here to help you succeed. And one of the examples here recently was Kingsbury out of Pennsylvania that wanted to expand their business here. We were able to streamline the process for them where they were able to get their permits through the Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday and start construction. I believe it was in February that they were able to start construction.
All right. Larry, did you want to add anything to that?
Right, if most businesses come here, we've been able to fast track them. As we did Cisco down there, when they came in, we was able to fast track them and get them up and going in a year and a half. Just lately, they're adding on down there. We was able to get them done within 6 months. And so, just like the Chevron project coming here, we were one of the fastest projects that they put up in the state, 10 months. And they're gonna start construction, but only 10 months to get it going.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Rick, and this is something the Chamber Governmental Affairs Committee took on about a month ago and gave feedback to Sutter County on, and based on that and some other feedback they were getting even from their own supervisors, they decided to study the situation more. But with respect to the proposed impact fee increase in the county that you could find yourself voting on, everyone says they believe development should pay their fair share, often at the risk of hurting the proposed development. How will you ensure that the monies from an increase in impact fees aren't going to be used to subsidize existing general fund deficiencies? Rick?
Well, that's a good question because there are a lot of deficiencies that need to be funded. We know that the last building boom, when I was working in Elk Grove and they were charging $50,000, $60,000 a house for building fees, Yuba City was charging like $14,000. And that's why we don't have a Pease Road interchange. That's why there are a lot of infrastructure needs that were not met. And while it was nice to help builders, keep them going, it wasn't our job to give them excess profits. As far as making sure it goes to the right place, you just have to stipulate that those dollars would be put in a certain fund and not used for anything else.
John?
Impact fees are an important part of how we do business. Since Prop 13, which basically took away the ability to raise the property tax each year to cover for these types of things, basically, you're right, new development has to pay its own way, and it shouldn't be a burden on the existing taxpayers. there's a study that's done, it's called an AB 1600 study, which is what determines what are your needs for your build-out, to meet your general plan. And sometimes I think in looking back, at least for the city, when we did our AB 1600 study back in 2006, we were right at the top of the market when everything was going crazy. And as we all know, 2008, everything took a dive. So part of it is that we may need to go back and look at those and see, are the fees that are being charged for or collected, are they reasonable in today's market? If the market has dropped, we shouldn't be collecting for services that we thought we were going to build in 10 years and now be maybe 30 years before we actually build those projects.
Larry?
John's pretty much right on that. You don't want to impact the people that you already have here. That's why impact fees are here. Let's say if you already have a development and somebody comes in and they want to do another 1,000 acres in behind the developments there, you're going to have to widen the road. So those impact fees should pay for those roads, not go in the general fund, which they don't go in the general fund. Also, just lately we had a developer down south. He paid $1.5 million a Riego Road. That's why we have the Riego Road interchange. If he had to pay the $1.5 million to go off that Riego Road, we probably wouldn't have that interchange.
Any further comment, Rick? Okay, thank you.
All right, this question is from the audience that came in from the last session. Sacramento County just approved a ban on growing marijuana outdoors. And currently, Colusa County is looking at a ban on indoor and outdoor grows. Would you support or oppose a cultivation or growing ban on marijuana? Why or why not? And if you do, what type of ban do you see proposing?
This is an easy one for
We'll
me.
start with Larry.
Sorry,
I think John.
Is it John?
Yeah. This is an easy one for me because I was the only council member who voted no for the marijuana ordinance here in Yuba City. And I did it for 2 reasons. Number one is that our children, we tell them that drugs are bad, but yet we make laws that make it okay to grow drugs. To me, we're sending mixed messages to our children when we do that kind of thing. Number two, when they are growing marijuana in the backyard, it's like planting gold bars in your backyard. And you want to protect those gold bars from somebody stealing them. And typically the people that are wanting to steal it, they have guns too. And we don't need guns in our neighborhoods. And to take this out into the county, I would support an outright ban altogether like Live Oak did. I think that's the direction that we should be going.
Larry?
Actually, I was one of the leaders in the county to work with county council to have this because I had so many complaints within the city and out in the county. It was just growing rampant. I think pretty much we have a good rule right now. We're going to have to test it this next year. It's going to be tough, but I think a lot of neighbors are going to be the patrollers of it. If we have any problem with it, we would go out and we'll pull it out. But I am against the marijuana. I don't think it's a good deal right now for our children. And some of these places, they grow it. It's right next to schools, churches, and there's children there. There's one place that we had pictures in Sutter that a fellow was walking around gardening it with kids running around with a pistol on his side. That's not what we want in Sutter County.
Rick?
Well, the state voters voted to have medical marijuana, and people that have a need for medical marijuana, I think we need to take care of them. One thing they've done in Canada is they've licensed commercial growers to take care of it. That way you don't have the opportunists, the criminals, et cetera, et cetera. So that might be one way to go. But we still need to make sure that the people that need the marijuana medicinally have a chance to get it.
John, did you want to add anything to that?
One more thing I'd like to add is that even though the state has done this, it's still a federal law, that it's against the federal law to grow and have marijuana. As far as medicinal, we go to pharmacies for all the drugs that we need. We don't grow them in our backyard. So this is no different. If there is a medical benefit of that, then it should be done through the normal pharmacy network that we currently have. It shouldn't be allowing people to grow that in their backyards.
Okay, let's go to our next question, and we'll go to Larry. Recently, a solar array development was shot down by the county on North Township Road, I believe around 260 acres. With future increased needs for electricity in California, and certainly in Sutter County, solar seems like a viable and quick way to lessen the future shortages. where should these arrays be placed in the county?
Right, and I was one of them that voted against that out there, taking good farm ground and covering it up with solar panels. The family that had that, they made a very good profit. They're gonna put walnuts in there now. Sutter County, we just approved within the last 10 months a solar project, Chevron. We're gonna put it over our parking lots, over the top of our buildings. And this is gonna save the county about $18 million over the life of it. And also it's gonna supply 75% of our power for all of our public buildings. So I think that's the way to go, is over the top. I've been working with the high school out in Sutter, and we've sent Chevron out there. So hopefully we can get it hooked up on Sutter High School. They've got a big lot that we can put solar.
Rick?
Well, I agree with Larry that definitely we should be protecting farmland. I grew up on a farm in South Dakota, and they're not making any more of it last time I checked. There is a problem with people having a right to do with their property what they want to, so it's always going to have to be balanced. But if there are places where we can put solar where it's not infringing on farmland, it's obviously a no-brainer.
John?
I agree with the other two candidates. Taking farmland to put in solar panels is wrong. We only have so much of that, and that's why we have a sphere of influence and so on, so that we're not gobbling up that farmland. That is a key to our economic development in this region, is farmland. So, as Larry mentioned, putting it in parking lots as covers over parking lots or on top of buildings, that's probably a better way to do it. I know that when the city looked at adding solar to the senior center, one of the issues that I had with it was the return on investment was like 18 years. And I know that the cost has come down some now, but the reality is that if you have one panel go out on you, you're not going to be able to pay for that and make a return on the investment that you have to put in. So we have to be real careful balancing that too, and making sure that these projects pay for themselves in a reasonable amount of time.
Anything further, Larry?
Right, I'm gonna talk about a solar project that a lot of people didn't know about. It came forward to me that there was actually a landowner in the Buttes who wanted to cover the whole east side, just by Southbridge, the solar panel. In the late afternoon, you'd look up there and all you'd see was a glare. And I pretty much told them no, I wouldn't support it. I'd fight them all the way. But there's a right place and there's a wrong place. And even that type of ground, it's not gonna grow much, it's just cattle ground. Why go ahead and put them on top like that?
Thank you.
All right, we'll start this question with Rick. Please explain your position on supervisor pay and benefits. Are supervisors overcompensated? What can you do without? Less pay, less medical coverage, maybe erase the pension provision? What would you suggest? Rick?
I hate to be overly critical, but I don't think that the board in the last 10 years has done real well with some of the major issues. If they had done what they needed to do in terms of the pension issue, the crisis, if they had taken care of some other issues properly, I think maybe they'd be underpaid. If we can handle the issues coming before us, I don't think there's any need to reduce the pay. It's going to be, a supervisor will be worth every penny. It's going to take all our efforts. It could be a full-time job. It's going to require us to work day and night to fix these issues that are before us.
John?
Well, as I said in one of the previous forums, that if we want to pay nothing for our supervisors, then we as citizens are going to get exactly what we deserve, nothing. It does take a lot of time and effort to govern, and it is something that should be compensated for. As far as how much that is, I feel that that should be determined by a separate commission rather than just by the Board of Supervisors themselves. I think it's appropriate that the Board of Supervisors are responsible for determining the pay of employees, but when it comes to their own pay and their own benefits, it should be determined by a separate commission.
Larry?
Right, I sit next to many supervisors in the state on some of these boards. Some of them make up clear up to $200,000, and we're one of the lowest ones in the state. Actually, Yuba County gets about $60,000. I do agree a different board should do the compensation and study it. I've been a proponent to having it done just like the judges do through the state. If the judge gets a raise for 1%, That's all you get. You don't vote on it, and that way it takes it out of the hands of the supervisors, and it's done with the state and the judges, and not for yourself.
Rick, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, there's one aspect of compensation. Supervisors should not be getting defined benefit pensions. It's a huge conflict of interest, and it needs to be done away with now, sooner than later.
Thank you.
This is our final question. We'll start with John. This is from the audience. Currently, the county employees are receiving life insurance for not only themselves, but also for their spouses and children. What, if anything, will you do to remove this type of benefit from the backs of the taxpayers?
Well, I think most employers, if they offer life insurance, it typically is for the employee only, and quite honestly, it's a fairly small amount. It's not a large policy. I think that if the family member wants to purchase that additional life insurance for his spouse or children, that they should pay for that. It shouldn't be paid for by the taxpayers.
Larry?
Correct, and that's exactly how it is. Actually, the employee gets a small amount. If they want to add their family onto it, they have to pay that increment amount. It's like for one person, two person, or three persons. It's not a free, we don't pay for everybody in the family's insurance. So actually you have to buy what you want to cover the rest of your family. And it's not very much, and they pay their share, and we pay the share too. It's a shared amount.
Rick?
I think I agree with Larry. If it's justified, you know, it's a benefit. It's part of your total compensation. And if the person is doing their job, then if their compensation is enough to keep them doing the job and they're doing a good job, that's great. My feeling has been that over the last 10, 20 years, we've I believe that employers should always treat their employees properly. I will not do business with a company that doesn't treat their employees properly. But my feeling is that we've kind of treated our public employees more like they're pets than employees. We've kind of pampered them a bit, and I'm afraid with all the strains in our budgets, and again, the pensions are going to decimate our budgets. We just need to be a little more realistic and just deal with reality. That's my feeling.
We got through that fairly quickly, so we're going to squeeze one more in.
That's Bob, always trying to squeeze another one in. All right, well, this one comes from one of the audience members here. In both city and county salary and benefit negotiations, you have pay, perks, hours, extras, overtime, and holidays. They're all negotiated by and for all the rank and file employees and their department heads. Members of the council or board of supervisors all get their paychecks and perks from the same single source, we the taxpayer. But the taxpayers are not permitted to voice at the negotiation table. One, do you support that? If so, why? And if not, what do you propose to do to balance this continually growing income gap between the bureaucracy and the worker bee? And who do we have going? I think it is Larry. Larry.
We do negotiations. Actually, the ultimate person to approve these negotiations is the board, and we stay pretty tight on it. We have not given a pay raise to our employees for 6 years. We've negotiated with them. We may have given them a day here, you know, for the holiday, but we have not given any pay raises. And the negotiations are done pretty much. We used to have a negotiator, but now we don't have to pay the negotiator. We have somebody in-house that negotiates with them, and she's pretty firm. And actually, we work pretty much with the union because they know we don't have the money, and we'll do what we can to help our employees.
I don't think the taxpayers have been adequately represented in the process. Larry says that we haven't been giving increases, but again, if you look at the latest CalPERS reports, you look at the payroll for miscellaneous, the payroll 3 years ago was 45 million, and in the last 2 years it's gone down to 44.5 million. That's not a reduction. I mean, you look at individuals in this community that have seen their paychecks cut in half, their business cut in half. I talked to a plasterer who had 45 employees, now he's got 5. I mean, we're just not. The reality is we're not cutting back government we're just not increasing it. And if there's ever a boom, they're going to want to increase it again. I'm not for that. I think we need half as much government, and to do that, we're going to have to be very strict with our employee groups, who, by the way, would not even interview John and I. So that's going to be quite interesting if either he or I is elected. By the way,
John?
I'd like you to repeat the questions. I think you got a little bit off track there, so I just want to make sure I'm on track.
Don't take the rest of our time. No. We'll go ahead.
All right. In both city and county salary and benefits negotiations, pay, perks, hours, extras, overtime, holidays are all negotiated by and for the rank and file employees and their department heads. Members of the council or board of supervisors all get their paychecks and perks from the same single source, we the taxpayer. But the taxpayers are not permitted a voice at the negotiation table. One, do you support that? If so, why? And if not, what do you propose to do to balance this continually growing income gap between the bureaucracy and the worker bee, or the taxpayer?
All right, thank you. In this situation, the city, the county, we do negotiate with the labor groups to come up with something. But the voters do have a say in this. And it's at the ballot box, which is going to be in June 3rd. You have the voice to say, if you don't like the way it's being done, you can vote that person out. So yes, you do have a voice. And it's a very important voice, and you need to make that voice loud and clear to the people that are pretending, or are standing up before you and want to lead you in the future. So, as far as the negotiations, as Larry mentioned, that the county had a negotiator. We didn't have a negotiator. This year we do have a negotiator. And so there's pros and cons of both of those, to be quite honest with you. But the bottom line is that as the city, and that's all I can speak for right now, is that we have laid it out on the table and said, this is where we're at. We're not hiding anything. We're in trouble, and we need your help to be able to make this. The private sector has had a lot of layoffs. People are not getting the jobs that they've had. And so to be able to even have a job is certainly something that's worth having.
Larry, did you want to add anything?
Right, and you want to know why the public doesn't get involved in our group. Basically, by law and the way you negotiate, you can't have another group come in to negotiate with you. It has to be within the union and the county, and they have their representatives and we have our representatives, and that's how negotiations are done. And it's not done overnight, it's done over months, and we would go over and over. And usually when you get one group to agree and do different things, it's usually pretty easy for another group to be able to follow suit, because they won't ask for a lot of crazy things on there. They'll go along with what has been negotiated.
All right, thank you. That was our final question.
And thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it. In just a moment, we'll have your 2-minute closing statements. I would like to mention that we have one more set of forums coming up next Wednesday. And the first one will be for Sutter County District Attorney candidates. We have 4 District Attorney candidates starting at 6 o'clock. And then about 10 minutes or so after 7, we'll have the 3rd Assembly District, 3 candidates running for that office. So that'll be a real good evening to come back and hear about District Attorney for Sutter County and the 3rd Assembly District. Let's start our 2-minute closing statements with Rick Dais. You have up to 2 minutes.
I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I hope I didn't sound too fractious, but I really do care about this community. My primary reason for running was that I have a great grandson. He's going to be 3 in August. So a lot of the things that have happened in recent years, the costs that we're incurring, can I say pensions one more time? All these things are going to be handed down to future generations. And most people get that. I mean, 14 trillion in county with the federal government, the state's broke. I have a copy of a pension report right here. The latest liabilities for Yuba City and Sutter County combined are over $1 billion in pension obligation. And the good news is we have 400 million in our account with PERS, so that means we're only 600 million short. I mean, it's abominable. And if we don't fix this, there isn't going to be a happy ending at all. We need to fix this issue. We need to all sit down together, not talk about what was done wrong in the past. There may have been some mistakes, but I think by and large, we as citizens kind of been a little bit asleep. So we need to really get involved. And I think it's unfortunate that we put so much pressure on the elected officials. If people would be involved too, we would have shared responsibility, and that's what a community is always about. Thank you for having us.
John?
A vote for John Dukes is a vote for a brighter future for Sutter County. I'm running to ensure a smooth and safe transition into the future. I have a great amount of experience for this position, which includes my knowledge and inner workings of the city government. None of the current supervisors have ever served on city council, and the gap between the city and the county needs an ambassador so our cooperative efforts can be effective. My Beale Air Force Base connections can be valuable to our county. High-level relationships I've built locally and nationally can keep us on top of the flood control issues, plus help us get support with local projects in agriculture and business. We need a supervisor who will represent the 3rd District both in the city and the county. It's about our whole community and helping the business and agriculture interact together. Unlike my opponent, I have not accepted or sought endorsements from special interest groups, such as union, employee groups, and services like law enforcement. I don't want to be beholden to those people when it comes time to make decisions and cuts. I have one goal, and that is to do whatever it takes for us to thrive as a community by improving the quality of life and giving our citizens the best opportunity for prosperity while keeping as much local oversight as possible. My personal compass, along with my wife Jeannie, is our Christian faith, and I ask for your prayers for the right outcome in this election. If you agree with the things I stand for, I need your support both now by sharing with my beliefs with your friends and family, and also finally on June 3rd with your vote. It's our future. Thank you.
Larry?
Okay, thank you. I run on five values. First of all, it's family values, honesty, integrity, leadership, and experience. I have never raised taxes in Sutter County, and I never plan on raising taxes in Sutter County. I have never furloughed an employee, don't plan on furloughing any employees. I'm a proven leader that listens. I have an open door policy. There are some of the items I do support is the marijuana law. I will support it as much as I can and as deep as I can with the sheriff department. I will work to secure funding for the last 7 miles for the levee, finish up our levees. I will work with Caltrans to finish up 99 to make sure it's complete all the way to Sacramento ever since I've been on. We've been a fighter, and Joe Bechtel was one of my people that I went with down to Sacramento to get a lot of that funding. And it's been many years. It's taken 15 years to get a lot of this done. I have been endorsed by different associations because they have my trust. They know if I have to, I will vote against them. I have the operating engineers. They were for the solar project. I voted against it. But they still come back and endorse me. So I do not have strings attached. The Deputy Association has endorsed me. The Sutter County employees have endorsed me. And the Yuba Sutter Farm Bureau. They know that I will represent them in water and fighting for water for our farmers for now and in the future. I'd like to thank you, and it's nice to have been in front of you tonight for this forum. Thank you.
I think we can all agree that all 3 of these gentlemen have a great passion and dedication to Sutter County, and I thank all 3 of you for running for office.